Everyone knows the story. One man betrayed Jesus with a kiss. And for over 2,000 years, that man has carried a name that means betrayal, Judas Iscariot. But what if the story you were told is missing something? What if Judas didn't betray Jesus at all? What if he obeyed him? Think about it. If Jesus came to die, if the crucifixion was part of the plan from the beginning, then someone had to make it happen. So here's the question no one really asks. Was Judas a traitor? Or was he the only disciple willing to do what had to be done? Before we go further, take a moment to subscribe, because what you're about to hear challenges one of the most accepted stories in history. Judas is easy to understand as a villain. 30 pieces of silver, a kiss in the dark, a teacher handed over to be arrested. It looks simple on the surface. But the more you look at it, the less simple it becomes. Because ask yourself this. If Judas acted completely on his own, if this was pure betrayal, then why does Jesus never stop him? At the Last Supper, Jesus says something that changes everything. One of you will betray me. He doesn't guess. He doesn't suspect. He already knows. So the question becomes unavoidable. If Jesus knew what was coming, why allow it to happen at all? And even more disturbing, why speak about it as if it was necessary? Some early interpretations of the story suggest something different from the traditional view. Not just betrayal, but participation. Not just rebellion, but fulfillment of a role already understood before the moment arrived. Now, consider the setting of the Last Supper itself. On the surface, it looks like a shared meal, but through another lens, it can be read like something else entirely. A final gathering, a coded message, a moment of instruction. Jesus speaks of his body, his blood, and what must come next. And Judas leaves before the meal is finished. Ask yourself, was he walking away from a mission or walking toward it? Because the text becomes strange here. Nothing records him hesitating. Nothing shows confusion at the point of departure. He simply goes. And what happens next unfolds exactly as it was described. Now we arrive at the kiss in Gethsemane, a moment that defines betrayal in nearly every depiction. But pause and examine it closely. Why a kiss? Why not a signal from afar? Why something so personal, so intimate, so identifiable? In a crowded garden at night, surrounded by soldiers, a kiss is not just identification. It is recognition. And recognition implies prior understanding. Judas doesn't need to explain who Jesus is. Everyone already knows. So what is the kiss really doing? Is it exposing Jesus? Or triggering something that was already set in motion? Now step outside the canonical text for a moment and look at how later writings, especially Gnostic traditions, reframe figures like Judas. In some interpretations, Judas is not simply a traitor, but a disciple who understands more than the others, the one who sees necessity where others see confusion, the one willing to carry out the hardest role in a divine plan. These texts do not erase betrayal, but they complicate its meaning. Because if the plan is truly divine in origin, then every act within it becomes part of that design, which leads to an uncomfortable thought. If Judas had refused, would the story still unfold? Or was his role structurally required for the narrative to continue? Now step back again, because whether you accept traditional theology or alternative readings, one tension remains unavoidable. Judas is always portrayed as responsible, but also always surrounded by inevitability. He is blamed for choosing, but described as fulfilling what was already written. So which is it? Choice or necessity? Betrayal or obedience? And if obedience is even possible in this context, then what does that say about the nature of the plan itself? Was Judas the villain of the story, or the only one who truly understood what the story required? And if that question unsettles you, that might be the point, because the Judas paradox is not just about one man. It is about whether events we call betrayal can sometimes be something far more complex, something closer to fulfillment, something closer to design, something closer to fate. So the final question is not just what Judas did. It is this: if everything had to happen exactly as it did, then who exactly was responsible for making sure it did?